Just north of Johannesburg for the latest in the series of New Age business briefings brought to you by the SABC and today sponsored by Transnet. And today we're talking about small and medium-sized enterprises. They generate about 60% of the country's employment, and this is where the country's growth is going to come from and all future jobs. So it's an important conversation to have. And I guess the question is, if you want to start a business, where do you get the money? Funding is an issue. Has government put into place the right kinds of policies to make sure that your businesses succeed? Some would argue that there's still some hurdles, but we'll find out what those are, or if they are indeed, maybe it's just a perception, that we'll get into. And there must be a reason why some of these businesses, in fact the majority of them, are not going to make it past 5 years. We're going to get to the bottom of this, and we'd like you to be part of that conversation. As I introduce now our guests, if you joined us a short while ago, you will have met already Dr. Tamim Azwai, who's a resident executive at the Wits Business School. Sitting next to him is the Managing Director of Business Partners Limited, and they know all about funding businesses, and we'll get a take on some of the issues that they are seeing on their desk. And Nazim Martin is the Managing Director of Business Partners Limited. Thank you very much, Nazim, for joining us, and welcome to the program. Next to Nazim, we have the CEO of the Gauteng Enterprise Propeller, Pelisiwe Twalatau. Thank you so much indeed for joining us. I think another one of government kind of agencies working very hard to create an enabling environment. So we'll find out what some of those initiatives are and how they're working. And sitting next to you is from the DTI, Department of Trade and Industry. He's the DDG, the Deputy Director General, Broadening Participation Division, Mr. Sipho Zikode. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. And you too come with a government voice and creating that space for small business to be able to work easier, faster, more efficiently. So we'll hear what some of those initiatives are, and in fact, if they are working. So we've heard from Dr. Mazwai. He spoke a lot about a positive move towards enabling small business and developing small business in South Africa, and that attitudes perhaps need to change a little bit. But maybe I can start with you, Nazim. You provide finance, you support. What are some of the issues that you think we need to be dealing with so that we get onto the right track and make sure that in 5 years' time, a lot of these businesses are not going to be disappearing?
Thank you, Peter. I think Dr. Mazwai touched on a number of issues which are really important, I think. But I think that he ended off probably where I would have started, and that is that we need to get in place a culture of entrepreneurship in our country. And I think many of the surveys, the recent surveys, the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor survey, says that we've actually regressed in that regard. That of South Africans, adult South Africans aged 18 to 65, about 8% of them are engaged in some kind of entrepreneurial activities. If one compares that to our peer countries of the same level of the economic development, the corresponding figure is about 16%. So we need to do many things. We need to celebrate entrepreneurship. We need to get entrepreneurship education going in the schools. We need to get school curricula to reflect little games of people starting tuck shops and things like that. So that entrepreneurship becomes part of the mindset of South Africans from the time they are young, in such a way that when they leave school, go to university, whatever educational skills they acquire, they then see starting their own business, setting up their own business as a noble career option, rather than becoming a professional and getting a job in a corporate South Africa like Business Partners, for example.
All right. Well, we're going to talk also about funding, because it's one thing to have a great idea, but another to actually get that business off the ground. And perhaps, Pelisiwe, you can talk a little bit about enabling these business ideas. What are the kinds of things that you're finding that you need to be doing, or some of the shortfalls maybe even that, these people come with ideas? Are they half-baked? Is there something going wrong? What's the lay of the land from where you're viewing?
Thanks, Peter. Good morning, everyone. For GP, For example, that's one of the critical strong points that we have, in that if you come with a business idea and it's half-baked and you haven't thought it through, we are able to assist you through developing a business plan, and we won't do it for you, but we'll do it with you to give you that enabling sense that Nazim was talking about. Because more often than not, people will bring a business plan that's not bankable. But because it is government, you expect that you should be given a loan. So we would like the sense of entrepreneurship to come out very strongly, to understand that as an entrepreneur, you're not going to get handouts. As an entrepreneur, you should know that the environment out there in the market is hardcore. So you have to behave in a particular fashion. And that you can get at very early stages, which is why education is important. And the big area that we work on is non-financial support services. So because businesses will, in the first 5 years, a small business will not, stand the test of time. The big issue is mentorship, coaching, and providing the requisite skills. One of the modules, for example, that we're introducing in our skills development program is negotiation skills and conflict management. Because if you don't know how to deal with those things, you wouldn't be able to take yourself to the next level. So we've forged a lot of partnerships around issues of mentorship and coaching with Standard Bank, with JCCI. That will give you the platform to learn from other people as well. So through these networks, then you find that SMEs are able to make it better out there, outside of funding, because then the funding game is a totally different ballgame altogether.
All right, okay, and to you, Mr. Zikode, I suppose the DTI really is at the forefront of government policy in terms of how to create an enabling environment for these small businesses. And maybe people don't know what you're doing, and maybe people don't know exactly what is available to them. So perhaps just give us an idea of what the DTI has set up, what is there that people can access, and make it easier for the small business to set up and get going.
Thanks very much. I just want to first start with the idea that you see enterprise development and the development of small businesses is not necessarily, the problem of government alone. You see, in South Africa, there's been this belief that, you have big business, and big business will take care of itself. The market must take care of big business. And then small business, that's the government's problem. I think we must move away from that notion. Everybody, big business, all the stakeholders, NGOs, government included, supposed to create this environment. Yes, government must lead in terms of developing policies like we are saying, and we have done that. If you look at the National Development Plan, which is a vision for 20, 30 years for South Africa, that where do you want to be? It talks about development of SMMEs, because all over the world, there's been, like my colleague Tami Mazwai was saying, the economies are driven by SMMEs. So we have to put in place programs. Obviously, he talked about SEDA. We have institutions of government that provides financial and non-financial support. We have SEDA as a national government institution, and then we have the provincial ones, like the Gauteng Propeller, and then the development corporations in the provinces. Some of them providing financial, some of them providing both financial and non-financial support. And then we also have program that supports the informal sector. As you know, our economy is characterized by two economies. You have the traditional first economy and then second economy, which is mainly driven by the informal sector in the rural areas and in the townships, like Dr. Mazwai was saying. So we are putting infrastructure in place, we are putting policies to drive this SMME going forward. Also, we are fostering the long-term business relations between small business and big business. Because without these strong linkages, Without SMMEs forming part of the procurement and supply chains of these big multinationals, we'll still have a problem that we have here currently in South Africa, where we have the first economy and the second economy.
All right, okay. So I think great opening statements from all of you. What I'd like to do now is go straight to the floor, get the questions from our delegates here and also from our viewers at home. And I'll certainly follow up with some of those questions during the conversation now. But let's go straight to table number 11. And I think that's Tony Gomes. Table number 11.
Good morning. Thank you. It's Tony Gomes, BPW. I just wanted to check, DDG Sikori, a question for you, please. We know that the DTI has a number of agencies that help women-owned enterprises quite extensively when it comes to financing. But I wondered if there was any way in speeding up the process at all. The red tape is quite extensive, and we find women really struggle for the first 3 years of their business. Thank you.
Okay. You can answer the question.
Yes.
So there's a lot of red tape at the moment, apparently. And what is the department doing to get rid of it and make things easier and simpler?
Yes, well, it's not only the Department of Trade and Industry that is involved in reducing the red tape. Throughout government, we are involved in reducing the red tape, even the Auditor General, you see. But anyway, let me first start by saying there is a pilot project that we did with about 6 district municipalities, where we are looking at the municipality level, what kind of red tape really hinders the growth of small enterprises at that level. We had a consultant, we worked with these 6 district municipalities, and the results were almost the same in terms of the problems encountered at that level. Starting from when people have to tender, the kind of compliance they have to go through, the response of government, even government institutions. And from that, we got recommendations that we need to spread out throughout South Africa, implementing them in terms of how do we reduce red tape so that we don't kill small enterprises. In this financial year, this program is going to be rolled out in all municipalities in South Africa. By the end of this financial year, at least we will have covered the whole of South Africa. But at a higher level, government is reducing the red tape. If you talk about even the payment cycle of government, as you know, it takes at times 6, even 12 months for government itself to pay for services and products that they procure for small SMMEs. Cabinet has taken a decision that all the government departments must pay for the services within 30 days. And if that is not happening, the heads of those departments will face the music. And there are many other programs, obviously, now focused on women enterprises. If you are talking about even the registration of companies, of co-ops, we have streamlined the processes. The forms that we have to fill in, are no longer like a pile, like it used to happen in the past. And we have institutions, and programs like Bavumile, the Bavumile program, where really we increase the competitiveness and the productivity of women-owned enterprises so that they don't have to worry about meeting the standards out there. They are just to focus on producing products and selling them. So there are many programs in place that assist women-owned enterprises. We have even the SAWEN program, which is a network of all women associations, even individual companies, whereby they meet with the DTI, they submit their problems to the DTI, and through the DTI, we then institute programs whereby they could be trained in whatever area they want and all those things, and whatever problem they might have accessing the services of government.
All right. Nazim, I'm just wondering, if there's one thing that government does well is that they come up with good ideas. But I find that sometimes the challenge is the people that they're trying to help don't quite understand often some of the complexities and some of the... Is this something that you're observing? Is there something that they can do better? And I think Dr. Mazwai also commented on this convergence or coming together of the various departments. And what's been your experience?
I think there's clearly a need for a little bit better coordination between government departments. I think efforts are being made to try and effect that. But there are still some areas where there are shortcomings. I think SIPO did allude to challenges experienced at municipal level, at provincial level, and at national level. Let's take a simple example. You want to start a business. You approach an accountant. Yeah, he helps you, or somebody helps you write the business plan. Now you have a choice of what business format you're going to use. Are you going to be a sole proprietor? Are you going to be a CC? Are you going to form a company? Let's say you form a company. So he tells you he's got some shelf companies. Now, you then have to apply to the Companies and Intellectual Property Commission if you're going to use a shelf company to have the directors change, for example. Now, you don't know all of that. And that takes longer than to actually establish a new company. I had the good fortune of sitting next to the Companies and Intellectual Property Commission, the CEO, on a plane one morning, and she advised me, tell all your clients not to use old companies or old CCs, but to establish new ones. So it's little bits of advice like that which could go a long way towards helping entrepreneurs to get their feet out of the starting blocks, really. So all in all, I think there's been a lot of efforts on the part of government. I think at the end of the day, the proof of the pudding is in the eating, and it's simple. If one looks at the ease of doing business in South Africa, and you compare that to other countries, and I think there's a credible report done on an annual basis by the World Bank. I spent some time, because we run a business in Rwanda, out of Kigali in Rwanda. In order to establish a business, right, to jump through all the legislative hoops and the regulatory hoops, and to get up and running and to get all the permissions in place, takes you less than a week. In South Africa, it takes a little bit longer than that, sometimes 3 to 4 weeks. Some of those red tape could certainly be reduced in some way, and I think efforts will be made in order to do that. I think the key, though, is lots of laws have unintended consequences. And I think it's important that whenever legislation is passed, some of the other built into that has to be a regulatory review, which looks at the impact that these laws are going to have on the lives of people who wish to become entrepreneurs, for example. And maybe one must be radical and say, you're not allowed to pass any more laws for a while, at least. Have a moratorium on laws until such time as we figure out how the existing laws impact on small businesses. Maybe one needs to be radical.
All right, okay, let's go to Paul Kutsia, who's on table number 13. Paul Kutsia.
Hello.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, thank you very much. My question is really, I'm involved in funding a lot of startups, a lot of venture capital businesses, from that to super corporates. And my question is to the DTI, really. I find that the government is doing quite a bit to help all the individuals with startups, but not everybody knows the incentives and who they can see and what is the processes to make it easy. I find that, yes, you can claim, but the claiming process is very difficult, and it's not always the easiest thing to get the claims done. Is there anything that the government can do to assist, or maybe advertise more to the people wanting to start businesses about all the incentives? That includes also the Job Creation Fund, which probably, in my knowledge, is still sitting on about 8 billion that's available to entrepreneurs and people wanting to create jobs in a manufacturing concern. Thank you.
Okay, Sipho?
Yes. That's a point as a department that we have already noticed that our programs are not that well known. For instance, if you take CEDA is in all the provinces, branches, it has kiosks, it has mobile units, but still, if you do research, you find that people, they don't know much about the CEDA services and all that. And, the government is in the drive to advertise more and more. As we might have seen in the past 3 or 4 weeks, we have been in the newspapers advertising the iPad plans, advertising the incentives that are there. And through our regional offices, we also have regional offices. Unfortunately, we don't cover all the provinces. I think we have offices in 4 provinces other than just Gauteng. Through those offices, we are also trying to promote more and advertise more and publicize more on the programs of the DTI. But yes, it's a point taken, and we are aware of that. Our marketing unit is also doing a lot now to advertise, more especially the incentives, because people, they don't know the incentives. And through the institutions that we own, like CEDA, in all the offices of CEDA, we promote and advertise the program. But it's a point taken. We are aware of that and we are working on it.
But Peter, I think just to add to that, as GP, for example, I know there was a question around issues of coordination and what we're doing around that. We have begun a process where Cabinet has taken a decision to say, for example, the challenges that SMEs have around being paid within 30 days and you find sometimes it's not necessarily government that is not paying them on time, but it is because they don't know. It comes back to this, to the question from Mr. Kutsie as to what it is we're doing. We've forged partnerships with CEDA. We've got an MOU with CEDA, with Transnet, and other organs of state and municipalities. And one of the rollout programs that has been requested by the cabinet, Gauteng cabinet that is to have these workshops, because direct interaction with people helps, because then they get to know exactly what it is that's going on and what you need. And we have set aside a team that will be looking at what the incentives are, be it from BRICS, or any agreement, or EU agreements, or the DTI or DBSA for that matter with their new accreditation. What is it that is available for SMEs that we could take out there for them to understand and begin to know what we're doing? So these partnerships with NEF as well, create a good platform. And these workshops would be going on through all the regions, because we also have 11 regional offices where we would be getting people together through the municipal structures, because that's where the juice is really.
All right.
Yeah.
If I may, I think there's perhaps, I think it's important to focus on the red tape and to eradicate the red tape. Make no mistake about that. I think if entrepreneurs are going to survive and set up and survive and thrive, they need to be pretty resilient. There's a strong body of thought now saying that maybe the red tape is a good thing. It roots out the people who are taking chances from the people who are going to become real entrepreneurs, who are resilient enough to navigate through the mess. Maybe there could be better communication. Maybe we could have more pamphlets made available to people so that they know what to do. But a true entrepreneur, someone who is going to grab an idea, pursue it against all odds, and is resilient enough to survive all the setbacks he's going to suffer.
Okay, we're going to have to come back to that point. We're going to fix your mic at the first commercial break that we come to. But Dr. Mazwai, you wanted to add something, and I'm just wondering, is it just about marketing? Because sometimes when I walk into a newspaper shop, whatever, I see the Financial Times and it's pink and it's really intimidating. And then I'll pick another paper and perhaps all the information I need is in there. Is it more maybe that people are quite intimidated by the whole process rather than it is that they don't know about it? They just don't want to take a bite at it. Your thoughts?
Let me just perhaps also deal with the issue of red tape, and then the question that you've just asked, I think my colleagues were a better placed to answer it. Now, let us look at the question of red tape. I think that red tape is a problem, but we've got to look at red tape holistically and not only refer to the red tape that is in government. We've got to look at the red tape that is in the private sector, itself. The private sector will have industries and sectors, and then they will say that those sectors have got certain standards that must be met. You find that small businesses are unable to meet those standards and so on. And as a result, then those small businesses are not likely to succeed, because they've got to keep on borrowing money to meet specific standards. So very few industry associations say to themselves, what impact does this have on small business? So if at all the whole issue of regulatory relaxation could spread along all the role players, including business, then we'd have a much more healthier environment for small business. Then the second point that one needs to make is that the OECD has brought out a study that shows that South Africa's economy is the most concentrated, very highly concentrated. It's an economy that will consist of a few big players in a sector. These few big players in the sector then have got relationships, horizontal and vertical. So you find that in niches where small businesses could go in, you find that the linkages are so tight that small business cannot go in there. So the issue about red tape is much broader than just looking at what government is doing or not doing. And we've got to take a holistic approach when looking at red tape.
All right, okay. We're going to deal with our own issues of microphone tapes just now. So we'll take a commercial break in the meantime. And when we come back, we'll continue with our conversation. And our next question will be coming from someone called Victor Msomi, who's on table number 8. Let's find out what's on his mind right after this.